folks. It's been a while. Sunday sermon, actually. So, at the behest of the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ, he says, I want you to go back to the Old Testament and start reading Samuel a couple weeks ago. And so we talked about Jesus as a king in the line of David. We talked about him as a priest in the line of Melchizedek. We talked about his military title as Lion of Judah. A lot of people, especially now in this political season, we're in election year, they want to start talking politics with me or current events, and I haven't watched the news in months. But as far as humans judging humans and being leaders, at this point in Samuel, the whole rest of the world had kings, and Israel did not, but God created Israel as an example to the world. And he also created Israel because salvation would come from the Jews, which Jesus Christ is the woman at the well. That's what was stated. Salvation comes from the Jews. Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, High Priest, and ultimately at the end our judge, and after some conquest with his angels as a military leader. But Samuel 8, Israel demands a king. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn, and remember Samuel was a judge, so he made his sons judges. The firstborn was Joel, and then there was Abijah, and they were judges in Beersheba. The sons did not walk in his ways and turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Then the elders of Israel gathered together at Ramah and said to him, Look, you're old and your sons don't walk in your ways. Make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. But this thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, Heed the voice of the people in all that they said to you. They have not rejected you, but they've rejected me, that I should not reign over them, according to the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, which they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they are doing this to you also. Now therefore heed the voice, whoever you shall solemnly forewarn them. However you shall warn them, show them the behavior of the king that will reign over them. Samuel told the words of the Lord to the people, This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his own chariots, to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots, and will appoint captains over thousands, captains over 50s. Will set some to plow his ground, reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for the chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give them to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, and your finest young men and your donkeys and put them to work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. You will cry out in that day because your king whom you've chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear from you that day. Nevertheless, people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, No, we will have a king over us, like all the other nations, that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people and repeated them in the hearing of the word of the Lord. So the Lord said to Samuel, Heed their voice and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, Every man go to his own city. So Samuel was a good judge. His sons were lousy judges. However, the people were, in spite of this, dynamic. They were serving other gods. And they are obviously looking at everybody outside of Israel saying they got kings. How are we going to deal with this corruption? and not dealing with our own corruption. People don't like the way God gets things done. I argue with them. It's not conventional. Well, convention is the world. That's why he says don't love the world, don't love the things in the world. Convention is our fallen nature, it's our corruption. And he has to prove over and over again that we're, not only as individuals, but as societies, we are corrupt to the bone. We are selfish and full of pride. And we don't like the way he gets things done. But this is his way. In Israel, he used as an example, and his son would come out of Israel. So read 1 Samuel chapter 8, and it will, and not just read it, but dwell on it. Think about it, pray about it, and think about the dynamic of how people are led and our governments, and all of this, of course, points to Christ, because Christ fulfilled, like I said, all of those roles he is going to ultimately fulfill and has fulfilled, and will bring an end to all of this, and we won't have to worry about our own hearts serving other gods, or our government, who we think is going to serve our purpose, ends up serving its own purpose. And this has gone on since then. It doesn't matter what form they've decided on. This type of dynamic, which is part of our corruption as human beings, continues to play itself out. It just depends on how long it takes, the levels of corruption, even especially look at our society right now. People try to replace God with government, and it never works out, and it never will. That's why Jesus Christ is the answer. I don't take part anymore. I have a Bible. I was just reading about the Ark of the Covenant. When the Philistines took it and it caused all this grief, they tried to give it back, and they did, but between them, the time it did all these things, 50,000 people were killed in one day for looking into it. This book that is ignored by society has both covenants in it. It has the power of love as its centerpiece. And there's also consequences, a lot worse than those 50,000 that died in one day. He will judge us, and he will play judge, and he will play king. But he's made a way, and he's made that way through love, and the love of his son, and he wants to forgive us. And he's made a way, so we have to choose that way. But read 1 Samuel chapter 8. I'm going to be in the Old Testament for quite a while, I guess, until we work some things out. But we'll talk to you guys sooner than later, hopefully. Have a nice Sunday.